Incantations are incredibly powerful, and I feel like many of them are still slept on. It does not matter which stage of the game you're in, just with incantations on their own you will easily destroy the early, the mid and the late game. In this video we will go over the best incantations build to destroy the late game with. This is the evolved and optimized version of my Faith caster build and thus the follow-up video to that video. If you haven't watched that video yet, then definitely watch it before you watch this video to really understand the intricacies of this build and what makes it so good. But that video also shows you how you can be extremely OP at the very start of the game with a very fun incantations build. So it's also a perfect video for when you just want to start a new playthrough. Now last time we killed a bunch of dragons and we want to continue on that path. We will want to get at least 6 more dragon hearts, and this time these 4 dragons are going to be on our kill list. But for this video you also want to do or start a few different quest lines. This is going to be the preparatory work for getting the most powerful setup for our incantations build. You'll want to do Rennie's questline, the Millicent questline and Varys questline at least until you unlock the Mogwyn Palace area. I will reference these questlines a few times in this video, so keep them in mind. For the dragons, you can kill Magma Worm Makar in the cave in the Lernia of the Lakes region. It's bordering the Altus Plateau region, and the other Magma Worm on the kill list is in the Altus Plateau region in the Lake of Lava. You can kill both of these worms relatively early in the game. But you will want to kill Adula soon after that, because the head prize comes in fact from killing this guy, as he gives 3 dragon hearts quite easily. And with my Fate Mage build, you will completely destroy him. You can kill Adula near the end of Rennie's questline, so you'll want to start working on that questline as soon as possible. Then when you unlock the snowy areas, you will want to kill Borealis the Freezing Fog. He is somewhere in the middle of the frozen lake in the northeastern part of this region. Killing Borealis will unlock Borealis Mist for you, and with that it brings us to the next important bit of this video, getting more OP incantations. With the 6 dragon hearts that we just picked up from killing all those dragons, you can now pick up 3 dragon incantations that are going to destroy the late game for you. Since we just unlocked it, let's first start off with the Borealis Mist incantation. This is the upgraded version of the Dragon Eyes incantation, which is the frost incantation that we used in part 1. It's just a very powerful spell due to the frostbite it applies on enemies and therefore deals massive damage. It's also now much easier to apply frostbite to multiple enemies at the same time as well, because this spell has a way bigger AoE range compared to Dragon Eyes, and due to the frostbite that this incantation applies on enemies, it also chips through enemies with a lot of armor and is very useful to use in those situations. After getting Borealis Mist, you'll have 4 dragon hearts left, and with these 4 dragon hearts you will want to pick up Grey Roll's Roar and Dragon Maw. Let's first talk about Dragon Maw. This is the ultimate melee incantation spell in the game. You could technically pick it up in the early game if you want, but it will not shine enough yet due to a lack of stats. But now at this point in the game it's very good, and you can replace Dragon Claw that we used in part 1 with it. The reason why Dragon Maw is so good is because it gives you insane poise when you use it. Which means that when you use it, any enemy that attacks you will rarely interrupt you or make you collapse, and thus you can get Dragon Maw off all the time pretty much. Not just against mobs but also versus bosses, and that's why this dragon incantation is great, because it's pretty much guaranteed damage even when everybody is attacking you. And as you might know, this is rarely the case with a lot of spells that take time to cast, because with a lot of them you will get interrupted. Combine it with the fact that it hits like an absolute truck. Its damage output is absolutely crazy. You will definitely want to pick this one up and use it as your main melee range incantation. Now, Grey Roll's Roar is an absolute monster in the late game as well. You will want to use this incantation always as an opener, because it buffs your defense with 20% and lowers your enemy's damage mitigation with 10%. So after casting this spell and hitting your enemy with it, you will be more tanky, but you will also deal more damage at the same time. Just for that reason, it's already an amazing spell versus any boss in the game. But it gets much better, as it's an AoE spell that casts really quickly, unlike the other dragon incantations in the game. It's a unique incantation that damages everyone around you in a circular type of shape, so if you want to deal damage quickly to everyone around you, this is the spell to use. And you can think of a lot of scenarios where that's relevant, like dangerous situations where you don't have time to cast stuff, or if you're surrounded by a lot of enemies and you want to quickly get rid of them. You can also use it to throw enemies off buildings or any place really, and you know exactly how many annoying enemies there are in this game that bother you when you're just simply trying to move or escape, so that's a very nice solution to that problem. Top it off with the fact that it does insane damage as well, and you can hit anyone with it safely because you can cover yourself when casting it, and due to its range and direction it will still hit everything near you. A nice combo that you can do with these two last spells that I discussed is starting with Greyroll's Roar and then instantly chaining it with Dragon Maw, and with this you will deal massive guaranteed quick damage, and it will just one-shot a lot of bosses in the game. Now that we have picked up these 3 powerful dragon incantations, it's time to pick up some more non-dragon incantations. We're going to start off with Swarm of Flies that you can pick up in the Mokan Palace, and this is the main reason why you want to pick up Fair's questline to a certain point, at least until you unlock Mokan's Palace, and the easiest way to get it from the moment you unlock this place is by starting at the Dynasty Mausoleum entrance. Then you'll just have to move a bit to the north and then through the pools of blood or whatever the red stuff is till you get into a shallow cave, and you will see the incantation on a corpse for you to pick up. Now this incantation is the definition of OP itself. Not only is its damage output insane, you can also use it to control any enemy in the game. Every time you cast it, a bunch of flies start beating the ever-living shit out of the enemy, and if you chain cast your swarms of flies, you'll pretty much just stun lock whatever you're fighting, while dealing insane damage. And the insane damage comes from proccing bleeds, and if you remember part 1, you know we went heavy in arcane with our incantations. And I'll talk about stats later in this video, but due to the way we invested points in our stats, the bleeds will keep proccing and proccing and proccing, and it just decimates whatever you're fighting. And for the damage and utility this incantation provides you, its FP cost is insanely low as well. With Swarm of Flies you can trivialize any boss in the game, and more importantly, the absolute hardest boss in the game you can completely destroy with it like it's nothing. Yes, you heard it right, Malenia has now been relegated in terms of difficulty, comparable to killing a random mob with this incantations build. And this is just one spell in my build. Combine it with all the other stuff that I showed you in part 1 and the ones we picked up so far in this video, and you already see how truly powerful this build is getting. Another incantation that we want to pick up is the Past Threads incantation. Thankfully you can get Past Threads en route while you're doing Millicent's questline for the ultimate prize that we pick up later in this video. After finishing the catered part of Millicent's questline, you can just simply let Gowry teach you the incantation. This incantation is situationally good, but its niche use is very powerful, and therefore it is worthy of a mention in my build. The situation where it's good is when you're fighting something very big. In those scenarios you will want to move towards your enemy's big ass body and cast the Past Threads close to them. It will deal insane damage as all the projectiles that you shoot will A, hit, and B, will actually keep traveling through the body of whatever poor thing you're fighting, which can result in one shots quite easily in a lot of situations. You'll also want to pick up Bestial Sling, not necessarily because it's good against bosses, but it has its own powerful use worthy of mentioning as well. Bestial Sling is something you can pick up from Gurranq in Caelid after you give him 2 Deathroot, and you can loot Deathroot all over the map. Essentially, here are a few spots where you can get them. It's a fast casting incantation that you can use to stagger and weave in damage versus any enemy, and for that reason it's also very good in PvP. And then you will also want to pick up Frenzied Burst. Frenzied Burst has an insane range. It can hit enemies from a very large distance and will also be very effective versus enemies with a lot of armor or a shield. It also builds up madness on your enemies and it staggers them, and when you do so you can just spam it over and over and the enemy will have no chance, and that's also why it's such a powerhouse in PvP. It will literally just destroy everyone you're facing there if you spam it. Now on to stats. In part 1 I covered up until level 100 in terms of how you want to allocate your points. Today I will assume a level 125 cap because that's what in most cases defines an actual late game build. You will want to get 40 vigor at the very least, and at least I would say 30 mind. I have 35 mind, but I'm not really sure yet if I really need more than 30 mind. Regarding our damage stats, 45 is the soft cap for both Arcane and Faith in any build using a seal with hybrid scaling, which is exactly what our Dragon Communion seal has. So get 45 for Arcane as fast as possible because we have S tier scaling on the seal for Arcane, and then afterwards work towards 45 Faith Also, you will want to invest 3 extra points at least into endurance for the gear that we're going to pick up later in this video. You could also get 36 Faith, by the way, since really we have plenty of damage anyways, and in that case, if you want to go for that route, then just put the rest into endurance. This will give you a bunch of extra stamina, which is really nice for rolling and chain casting, and it will give us an extra talisman option, which I will talk about later in this video. For gear, we can finally upgrade our Banished Knight set now with a very powerful set that you can obtain in the late game. For our headpiece, we will want to pick up the silver tier mask, which you can get after defeating the mimic tier in Nokron, which you will go to for Ranni's questline, so it's convenient. This piece gives a whopping +8 in stats to our arcane and also has decent overall defensive stats, by the way. Now with the stats, we already soft capped on damage for arcane, but we didn't soft cap on status build up, which is 60 for arcane. So these extra points will definitely be nice because it will make sure that madness, bleed, etc. builds up faster on our enemies, and it will also make us deal more damage because we're not fully hard capped. For our leg pieces, gauntlets and armor, we want to pick up the veteran set. For this, you'll want to kill Commander Niall at the Castle Sol rooftop at the northern part of the mountaintops of the Giants region. When you have done so, you'll want to go to the Round Table Hold and talk to this NPC, and she will sell you the entire set. Now this set is really incredible. It has very high defensive overall stats, as you can see, and also has a really good number of poise on it, as it will give us a whopping 70 poise. And with this, you are really tanky now, and your sustain is really up to par. For weapons, I just stick to the Reduvia dagger. I find it complementing the build really well with its fast attacks and ranged Ash of War that procs bleed, which is quite unique, and it really fits the caster playstyle perfectly. Most bleed weapons will have a melee Ash of War in fact, so if you want to shift like that, then very powerful options that have opened now since the last time are Rivers of Blood and Eleonora's Pole Blade, and these two weapons fit our investments in Arcane really well, and they are definitely OP and will deal massive damage and proc bleed for you. Something completely different is using the Jellyfish Shield, by the way, and make our secondary weapon a buff tool essentially. Every time we use it, it will increase our damage with 20% for 30 seconds. I don't think it's really necessary to use a buff tool like that, because the damage output with this build is already extremely high, but it all depends on your personal preferences, so just choose whatever you prefer. The most important thing is that you keep the Dragon Communion seal at all costs. If you manage to lose it somehow, then you're done for, and unfortunately you'll have to uninstall the game and go play Tetris instead. But on a real note, this is easily the best seal in the game for the reasons I explained in part 1, and investing points into Arcane is really the play to get the most out of Incantations. For our Flask, not much has changed since part 1, except that I don't use the fire component anymore. I mix up the Flask between Opaline Bubble Tier, Cerulean Hidden Tier and Magicka Shrouded Tier. If you want to use something more defensive, then use Opaline Bubble Tier and Cerulean Hidden Tier, and otherwise just use Cerulean Hidden Tier with Magicka Shrouded Tier. Magicka Shrouded Tier is really good now, as Smarks, Glintstone Breath and Borealis Mist are your primary damage dealers in the late game. Regarding talismans, you will want to keep the Radicon Sword Shield. It's just a bunch of extra relevant stats that are currently low for us for free, which makes it so nice. And if you have not spent any additional points in endurance, keep the Great Jar Talisman as well, so you're still able to use the medium roll while wearing the veteran set. Now we wanted to do the Millicent's questline to ultimately get the Phlox Canvas Talisman, which you get after the very end of the questline after killing Gowry. This is one of the best possible talismans you can have for this build, as it greatly raises the damage output of all our incantations. It's going to be a staple, put it in and never think about that motherfucker again. Then for the fourth spot, and perhaps the replacement for the Grey Jar Talisman, you can use various talismans, and I just rotate between a few depending on the area or boss that I'm going to face. The ones I rotate between are Ritual Sword Talisman, Magicka's Scorpion Charm and Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Ritual Swordman Talisman is just a nice damage buff, and a lot of the time you can get its effect for free and fully apply it, as you will cast with full HP. Magicka's Scorpion Charm is really nice as well because it boosts Both are primary damage dealers, Smaragd's Glintstone Breath and Borealis Mist, but it has the physical damage increase trade-off, so you have to be careful with that. And the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, or if you are still in an earlier part of the game, the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman is one of those talismans that a lot of people sleep on. It will make you even more tanky with our setup, as it reduces all the physical damage taken by 20%. So if you feel like you die a lot, then that's the talisman you want to take for sure. Again, a lot of preferences when it comes to this stuff, and it's just going to depend on your personal playstyle, so just try them all out and see what you personally like the most yourself. Now, how do you actually play the build the most optimal way? I will mention all the stuff we picked up both in this video as well as in part 1. So first of all, always use your buffs before you enter battle. Golden Vow is too good of a buff to miss out on. Then when you get into battle, you always want to use Execu's DK to apply Scarlet Rod. This is one of the most important incantations in the game, and it should always be a priority to use, because in many cases applying Scarlet Rod to your enemy pretty much means a death sentence for them, and you will just win the fight by simply staying alive. Then also use Greyrol's Roar somewhere at the start of the fight to buff yourself and debuff your opponent. After using our core spells, it's time to move on to our primary damage dealers, which are Smaragd's Glintstone Breath and Borealis Mist. It can be useful to first apply Frostbite with Borealis Mist, then shift over and use Smaragd's Glintstone Breath for the remainder of the fight, since it's in fact the hardest hitting incantation in the game. Alternatively, if you don't get the chance to cast any Dragon Breaths, then consider moving into melee territory to get some Dragon Maws in to decimate your enemy like that with the insane guaranteed damage that I showed you in this video, or cast some additional quick Greyrol Roars, but this time use it for damage and not for utility. If the enemy you're facing is moving a lot and you can't get a grip on them, then use Swarm of Flies so you start chain staggering them, and with that get them under control that way, and at the same time deal insane damage with proccing bleeds. If you're fighting something really big, consider using Pest Threats, and if your opponent has a big health pool or is immune to status effects, then Black Flame will do wonders as well. And finally, all the other stuff that I mentioned in part 1 and in this video, just use those spells for their specific uses. Playing with this build is incredibly fun, and it's so powerful that you will definitely destroy the late game and really any challenge with it if you follow this video. If you liked the video, then definitely leave a like. If you still haven't subscribed to your boy, then I don't know what you're doing with your life. No, I'm just kidding, but definitely subscribe and hit the bell thing so you never miss out on anything, and let me know your thoughts in the comments.